for the most part, the majority of small business owners in the state of Texas will be filing a no tax due report, but it's critical to file it because the comptroller, like I said, will report to the Secretary of State to suspend your corporate charter. And then, just like that, no corporate bail. Now, obviously, that becomes a problem only if litigation ensues and there's a lapse in the corporate veil. In other words, there's some sort of gap between when the company was in the good graces of the comptroller and in existence, and then it lapsed, for example, for a failure to file reports, some sort of litigation, lawsuit, dispute. Again, the example where some act of nature prevents the corporate entity for, the tornado in Rowlett, for example, destroys woodworking business, cabinet maker business, and not only are the tools gone, but all the equipment purchased and all the raw materials, that's all gone. That cabinet maker can't meet his obligations, and also in that, tragically in that disaster, the corporate entity's lapsed. Well, what do you do about that? You're without your corporate shield. Well, don't panic. The state of Texas makes it relatively easy for a corporate entity to reinstate, and I'll explain that. So the way you reinstate a corporate entity is, if you're within a certain time frame, you can do it online, as long as not too many days, months have passed. But if it's been years, well, then you're going to have a problem. You're going to have to go down to the comptroller's office. You're going to have to pay a big reinstatement fine. You're going to have to report earnings that weren't previously reported to the comptroller. It's going to be a lot of forms. It's going to be a tedious process. The comptroller has just a few offices in the state of Texas to do that in. One of them is in Richardson, if memory serves, in Dallas, Texas. There's one in Austin, of course, and they're around the state. You can find them on the comptroller's website. And just be prepared to be there for a while. Be patient. It's a lot of forms, a lot of reporting. Have a check ready, or some other way, some other secure way to pay the comptroller for what's going on, because you're going to need to pay these back reporting fees and failure to report fees, and that's all worth it and good, because you need to get the corporate entity back in good graces, and you need to get that corporate veil reactivated. So another thing to be concerned about, if there's been a lapse in the corporate charter, form, entity, what have you, and litigation has ensued, how do you fix that in the middle of litigation? Well, there's going to be an argument by the other side that they should be able to probably set aside the corporate veil, in other words, to get at your personal assets. However, you can make a good faith argument that once that entity's back in the good graces of the state of Texas and all of its corporate charters have been, all its back reports have been filed and fines paid, this, that, and the other, that you should enjoy the protections of the corporate shield. Now whether or not the other side will be able and entitled to make that argument that your personal assets or the corporate owner's personal assets should be at risk, that's a case specific scenario, and it's not an easy burden to pierce the corporate veil. But here's something to remember, that the corporate veil generally can only be pierced in situations where the corporate entity has been used to commit a fraud or to commit a wrong, to breach a duty of good faith and fair dealing to a fellow business owner. Those are the ways in which a corporate entity can be set aside, because the state of Texas is the public policy of the state of Texas that corporate entities cannot and should not be used to perpetrate wrongs. So our state law, while very protective of corporations, is also quite harsh when corporate entities are used to perpetrate wrongs on their business partners, on the general public, on consumers and customers. We're very fortunate that the state of Texas has very sophisticated laws to help the innocent victims of corporate fraud or corporate wrongdoing, and has pretty harsh penalties for those rare but occasional scenarios where the corporate entity has been used to do wrong against its fellow shareholders and partners, or, as is more common, against consumers and customers. And the state of Texas will allow you to make arguments to set that corporate entity aside to get at the personal assets of those who benefited from the wrongdoing. And the reason why is because they pocketed the money, right? Who benefited from that wrongdoing? Well, it's those corporate owners. And why did they do wrong? Well, because they were going to pocket that money, spend it on Corvettes, beer, things that were wrong, instead of building the cabinets or, you know, doing whatever goods and services were contracted for. They profited from it. So the state of Texas, just like many states, will not allow that kind of abuse to stand.